Sheil, the Eagles. Howie is certainly not a fool. But he's got a tough challenge here. I think the Eagles have more holes than they've had at any point since 2021. And obviously they did incredible coming out of that. 2 Super Bowl appearances, a lot of elite seasons, the whole deal, title. Let's start with Nakobe Dean. My strategy, Sheil, with Nakobe Dean, and it's one of the only times if I'm Howie I relent. I look at Vic Fangio and say, Vic, you get him. We keep him if you need him. But if you can tell me we can get by with Jahad Campbell, we're going to get by with Jahad Campbell. What do you think happens with Nakobe Dean? What do you think of my strategy, Sheil? If I'm Howie, I turn it over to Vic.
I mean, I think Nakobe Dean's gone. I would be, of the big free agents they have, I would be shocked if he were to return. You just mentioned it. They have so many holes on the roster. You used a first-round pick on Jahad Campbell. You play nickel on, 70, 80, 90% of the snaps. You play with 2 linebackers. You paid Zach Bond last offseason. So I think it's going to be Zach Bond and Jahad Campbell. I'm with you. It stinks. Nakobe Dean has been very fun to watch. He's been a great player. He's been a great leader. But I think when you made that Campbell draft pick last season and he played well enough when he was on the field last year where you can hope that he could improve, I think you're saying bye to Nakobe Dean, and this is really going to hurt you guys. I think the Dallas Cowboys might look at Nakobe Dean and say, we've got the former Eagles defensive backs coach, and he's a great guy to come in and lead our defense. So that one could be painful. We'll see what happens with him in free agency.
Sheil, it feels like this offseason is going to be like the previous offseasons that Howie has mastered for our Eagles, where he extends guys like Jalen Carter. Do you expect that to happen this offseason? But I also want to ask about that extension itself. I mean, Jalen Carter's extension enables the signing, the continuance of this kicking it down the road type thing because it'll free up money for everyone else. I mean, is that the way you look at this? And do you think Jalen gets re-signed this offseason?
Yeah, Howie's, they got a lot of balls in the air where they have to figure out what they want to do, how much cap space they want to create. Do they want to kick the can down the road and commit to some of these players long term? So I'm not sure on Jalen Carter. I'm kind of 50-50 whether they do something this offseason or not, because if I'm Jalen Carter, I say I want to be paid like a top 5 defensive tackle in the NFL. And so, you could be looking at close to $30 million per year for a player like Jalen Carter. Did he play to that level last season? I would say not, but he was also injured. So it is a little bit tricky. He can. So it's a matter of you're really projecting. Now, they're not forced to do something this offseason with him. They could just exercise the 5th-year option. Now he's locked in through 2027, and you say, let's have him play 2026, and then let's make a decision on him after next season. So, yeah, that's an option for them, but I'm on the fence about whether they'll actually do that or not.
Sheil, how concerning is Jaelen Phillips' history, his injury history, his retirement from football at UCLA? It's a little bit wonky, and it causes me to worry about the idea of signing this guy to a longer deal. Am I overreacting?
Well, it's another one where you talk to people in the NFL and scouts, and the old school people will say injured guys get injured. That's how it goes, that it is predictive, that if you look at what a guy has done in the past, whether he's been durable, it tells you in the future whether you're going to have him or not. But if I'm in Jaelen Phillips' camp, I could say, listen, he had those injuries. He came back last year. He didn't miss a start. He was a great teammate. He seemed like he fit into the culture. He plays really hard. I can tell you that on film. He's really versatile, so don't be worried about that. Now, part of this is the nature of free agency. Guys get to free agency for a reason, and a lot of times it could be an injury history. It could be they're not a perfect scheme fit everywhere. It could be off-field stuff. There's all sorts of reasons, and so that's the nature of free agency. But if he hits free agency, I think he's going to get a big deal. And I think, I'm looking at numbers around $25 million per year for Jaelen Phillips. And again, if you don't extend him before the start of that window next week, I do think there are going to be other teams that are interested in paying him that much, and you have to have a walkaway number and be disciplined and say, no, we can't go above whatever number you determine internally.
Sheil Kapadia with us. Sheil, let's talk about Goedert. So when they came to terms last year, it struck me like this is it. This is the final season of Goedert. And then he caught a lot of touchdowns, but was a lot lesser as a blocker. Can you describe to everyone listening how much lesser you thought he was as a blocker and how that might factor into Howie's thought process here? And do you expect him back?
I thought he was a completely different guy. Now, I will always give the caveat that I don't know were there injuries involved, were there other things involved that made him a lesser blocker. But, I mean, I would say almost unrecognizable from the blocker we'd seen previously in his career, where I thought he was probably a top 5 blocking tight end in the NFL. And I thought last year the blocking of their tight ends, and he wasn't as bad as Grant Calcaterra, but he still was not good.
Sheil, it was almost like he wouldn't stick his face in there anymore. Where he always stuck his face in there previously. I was wondering if he had, nerve stuff going on, and this is totally speculative, but at times when I had really bad burners going, like I would sneeze and get burners down both arms. It's possible he just didn't want to stick his face in there.
Could also be a contract year, and he didn't want to go as hard there, and he wanted to catch the ball, and he wanted to get his numbers up and get paid and stay healthy. I mean, he's a guy who hasn't stayed on the field.
You get paid by blocking, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Take a pay cut,
like
too, James. It's hard to get into guys' heads, but when you just try to and say, hey, if I won a Super Bowl with the team and I gave them everything I had and they asked me to take a pay cut, am I going to perform at the same level for every little thing that I'm being asked to do? Now, maybe you are, and it could be what John said. You never know with injuries, but no, he wasn't close to the same type of blocker that he was previously. So Goedert is a very tricky one because they got to have a tight end on the roster. And so it's kind of like if you don't sign Goedert, you have to go out and find someone else, which they could do. And if you're Goedert, you say, this team made me, take a pay cut last year. If I have other options, I'm going to go take the money wherever it is. So, Goedert.
I think he's gone. Yeah.
Is this offense going to need an inline tight end, though? A guy who can capture that edge when we're running the outside zone. And when we're stretching it, we need someone to crush that down or, pin that or, log that. And Dallas Goedert did a great job for years and years. Now, if he's gone, who does that?
Yeah, this is to your guys' point. This is why Howie Roseman gets paid the big bucks.
Right.
You got to find somebody who is the next Dallas Goedert, and I think this isn't just free agency or trade or the draft. I think this is I think they need multiple tight ends to add this offseason. So, they've got to find those guys, whether it's now or whether it's in the draft.
All right, Sheil, let's talk about AJ. I was just thinking about Elliott for a moment. Let's talk about AJ Brown, because I was about to reference Njoku, who Elliott referenced yesterday. We'll get to that in a moment. All right, Sheil, double instincts on AJ. One, he's gone. Two, Howie's trying to do a Jedi mind trick with all these reports through reporters that I might keep him. I really love him. I really love him. No, I really, really love him, and I'm going to keep him. You better blow me away with a trade. I think it's all a bunch of nonsense. I think Howie is desperately trying, and good for him, to try to drive up the value as much as possible. But I don't buy that this thing is now swung back to like AJ is likely to be an Eagle. Tell us from a reporting type standpoint, how does it work sometimes when a GM's trying to message stuff to other GMs through the media? And what do you think's going on here?
Yeah, so what happens is the Combine last week, that is really the start of the offseason, where in various restaurants, bars, meeting rooms, coffee shops, agents are meeting with GMs. GMs are meeting with other GMs. They're having casual conversations on the streets. They're having conversations as they watch some of these prospects work out, and you get a hint of what a guy is going to command in the trade market, and you get a hint of who's actually going to be available, kind of in an unofficial capacity. And so I think there was reporting that A.J. Brown's agent actually, or I think it was deemed as A.J. Brown's camp, was kind of talking to teams as well about, hey, what, he would be interested in playing here. What would you give up? Here's what the Eagles are thinking. So all those lines of communication are open. I tend to lean towards where you are, Joe, that Howie Roseman's just doing his job, and he's saying we're going to start out very high with what we're asking for A.J. Brown, knowing that probably no team is going to meet that demand. But, hey, you never know. It only takes one. And then as we get closer to the start of the league year here next week, maybe we bring that down a little bit or we revisit those conversations. So I'm with you. I'm not telling you it's 100% that he's going to get traded, but I would still lean that way, that especially when you look at this free agent group of wide receivers, it is weak. And so if you are a team that is looking for a number one wide receiver, there's literally nobody out there that you can sign that's as good as A.J. Brown.
I want to go back on the other side of the ball, Sheil. I forgot to mention Reed Blankenship. You said you don't think Nakobe Dean will be brought back. Is Reed Blankenship a guy that they favor to the point where they try to pay him the big bucks to return?
I think the thing you do with Reed Blankenship is you keep the lines of communication open and you're patient, because there's a lot of safeties out there actually in free agency. And so there's a chance that he goes out there and maybe he doesn't get exactly the type of deal he wants right away, and then you come back to him and you say, okay, now we're at a number where we can bring you back. So that's one that is a little trickier, because the safety market is always hard to project, because all these teams play different schemes. But he's one I would say more likely than Dallas Goedert, but still, if you ask me, is he going to be back, I would probably say it's less than 50-50.
So, Sheil, what about who are the external players the Eagles could be interested in? I mean, we know they might need a safety. They might need an other corner. They might need an edge rusher. They definitely need some offensive line depth, and they probably need a wide receiver or two. Who could be, an Eagle that's a veteran NFL player?
Max Crosby?
Crosby, I think they'll call on. I think ultimately what it will take to trade for Max Crosby, they probably won't be willing to go that far. But, yeah, I would imagine that they're at least checking in on that possibility. I think tight end is the big one. You mentioned Elliott. I know he had the report that they're interested in David Njoku from the Cleveland Browns.
Not a good blocker, though, right?
Not a good blocker, more of a receiving tight end coming off of a down year, but previously had been very effective. Another guy kind of in that vein is Isaiah Likely from the Baltimore Ravens, where he looks like a really fun
another receiver.
Another receiving
basketball-looking guy.
Yeah, but you know what? You could address that, John, in free agency, and then you say, all right, in the draft or later in the offseason, a lesser expensive guy we're going to get to come in and play more of that blocking role. Because it's hard. It's hard to find a lot of these guys that are well-rounded. So I think tight end's definitely one of them. Safety, there's so many safeties out there, again, that it's just hard for me to predict which type of guy that Vic Fangio would prefer, but that's someone you've got to add. There's someone like Jaquan Brisker from the Chicago Bears. There's Cam Curl from the Rams. But I'm just throwing names out there. I mean, there's so many guys out there that you would look at. But I think those are the two big ones. And then I am curious, if they can't sign Jaelen Phillips, I think they'll try to sign Jaelen Phillips. But if they can't, what their plan B is.
Yep.
Bradley Chubb is a player with the Dolphins who they released, who played with Vic Fangio in Miami, that do they just say, hey, it works with Jaelen Phillips, he knows the scheme, let's go ahead and bring in a player like Bradley Chubb. So I think tight end, safety, and edge defender, those are kind of the three areas that I'm looking at that they'll address in some way, not with a huge splash, but in some way in free agency.
All right, Elliot, I'm saying Elliot again because I'm thinking again, Elliot. Sheil, my apologies.
Pull
it together.
I'm thinking about Elliot so much.
Way too much. Well, his name's in my head with the Shore Parks thing and the hyphen and what's up with that and the parents and the whole thing. All right, Sheil, final thing. I've been on a heater with my sports opinions this decade.
Okay.
Self-proclaimed. Carson in 2020. Jalen's not as good Jalen's not as good as people think he is. Phillies last year were better than the Eagles. All that stuff. People don't like to hear what I say sometimes, but I'm on a roll. Here's where I'm at, and I'm curious if you agree or disagree, because all four, John, Devin, James, and Rhea, all disagree with me. I think the Eagles are headed down, and I'm going to give you the case. I think they're going to lose more than they gain this offseason. I think the brutal offense that they're going to try to reinvent is not really going to work that well. I don't like that they don't have Stoutland. I worry like hell about the Dickerson-Juergens Lane thing. And, they are going to have a tougher schedule than others. And I think the Giants, Washington, and Dallas all get a little better. I see the Eagles becoming ordinary in 2026. They will at some point. Maybe it won't be this soon. But my instincts say they missed the playoffs in 26. Do you think I'm right or wrong?
I think it's possible, but I would say if you ask me right now, do they make the playoffs? I would say yes, they make the playoffs, but I don't think you lay out a crazy case.
And I think AJ's gone. And I should have said that.
Yeah.
It's a lot, man. It's a lot.
It's a lot. I need to see what happens here in the next month and in the draft because I do have confidence in Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie and the way they make decisions in the offseason. And I also think their defense offers a pretty high floor with Vic Fangio and the talent they have coming back, where I don't think the bottom's going to fall out of this team. Right. But that all the things you laid out are concerns of mine and could be bigger concerns of mine as the offseason goes on if they don't address them.